We are live. So today's daf is Kuf Mem Zayin, I believe. Okay, Baltic. So we learned about something called going Basar Umdana. And the Umdana in our Mishnah was that when a Shchiv Mara gives everything away and keeps nothing for himself, it's a raya that he's only giving it away because he's assuming he's not going to need it anymore. And therefore, if he recovers from that illness that made him into a Shchiv Mara, he gets it all back. That is the Umdana. So the Gemara tells two Tanoim that also hold Yigo Basar Umdana in various circumstances and discusses whether or not they would also agree in our Mishnah that Yigo Basar Umdana. So we had first Rab Shimon ben Menashe, who said that if someone heard Rahman al-Islam that a son died, and then he grants all of his assets to a third party, and then it turns out that the son was alive, so that Rab Shimon ben Menashe holds that there's an umdana that he didn't mean the gift and it's not gifted away. That was the first Rab Shimon ben Menashe, but there's a mokum to say that our Mishnah is different because in our Mishnah there's nothing specific that prompted him at that moment to give the matana. But in the case of Rab Shimon ben Menashe, when he heard that a son died, that's when he gave the matana. So there's something that prompted it. So it's a better umdana. The other Rab Shimon was Rab Shimon Shazuri, who said that when someone doesn't properly articulate the Nesinas Haget, he just says Kisvu Get Lishte, not new. In certain circumstances where he's stressed and he might not remember the right syntax, then we would say he meant Kisvu Nu, such as when someone's being let out to be killed, such as when somebody is leaving on a big trip, or such as somebody who's sick. Again, the Gemara says it's not a riot because there at least he said something. He said Kisvu, which would indicate he wants to get, while here it's not. So those were the two Reb Shimons who hold of Umdana, and then the Gemara quoted a Mishnah or Brisa and wanted to know who might be the author of this Brisa, and that was somebody who was sick and said, I thought I had a son, but it seems like my son died, so therefore I want to give all my nechosim away to Pliny. So in that case, the Gemara wanted to say, in Lemo Reb Shimon ben Menashe, maybe that's going to Reb Shimon ben Menashe because over there you have the same umdana. You have the same umdana that's saying that he only gave it away because he thought his wife was no longer meuberes, or he thought that his son died. And the Gemara said, no, you don't have a right. Maybe the Rabbanan would agree because there he's speaking out. Doimeli, he's when he's giving the gift away, he said, I thought I had a son and I heard the son died. So he's sort of almost making it very clear why he's giving this gift away. And that takes us to the dot. That's about 10 lines down on the top of Daf Kuf Mem Zayin Amaral. Amar Rab Zeir Amar Rav. This whole sugi talks about Matna Shchiv Mara. What's the Makar Minayin Matna Shchiv Mara Shehi Min HaTorah? Now, right off the bat, we have to know that Shchiv Mara is not Min HaTorah. As the Torah speaks out, Lav Min HaTorah Davka Kamar, because we're going to soon see that it was a D'Rabbanan. What it means is, with D'Rabbanan, it's in a smachta. So where do you see a remez to a matna shchiv mara min HaTorah? Zok the Gemara, it says in the pasuk, Shenemar it says, V'havartem es nachlos elabitoi. So if he doesn't have any sons, then you're mavir the nachal to his daughter. So yeshlach havor acheres. There's another case where you're maver the Yerusha from one person to another, shehi kazu. That will be just like when a bas gets it. Ve'ezu zu matna shchiv mara. What's similar about him? That the Yerusha is being diverted from his shevet to a different shevet. When a bas is born, and that's who the Yerusha go to, it's called a havara because it's likely that the Yerusha will not end up in his shevet because she could marry somebody from any shevet. So too, when someone's giving away through a matna shchiv mara, if he's giving away his nechosim, there's a havara here. Rab Nachman Amar Rabba bar Avua mehach. We have it from a different pasuk. When a satam is nachlos ila'ach, right? That was referring to if he doesn't have any children at all, and he doesn't have a father, then the nechosim goes to his brothers. So it says, and again we there's another similar type of nesina. That will be a matna shchiv mara. Rav Nachman, my time loy omar mi v'havartem. Why did Rav Nachman learn it out of unesatem? Why didn't he learn it out of v'havartem? Because v'havartem, you need to teach you a special chiddush. The Tanya Rebbe owner, all of the different Yerushas that are talked about in the Torah, it always uses a lashon of unesatem. Only Yerusha that the Torah uses a different type of lashon as v'havartem is only when the Yerusha is going from the son to the daughter because there is no son. What do we learn from there? Ein loch shema v'nachla mishevet l'shevet elabas. The only type of Yerusha that would cause a nachla to go from shevet to shevet is only if a daughter yarshins. Because her son or her husband will yarshin her. So the chiddush from this pasuk of Avartem is that Baal yarshins his wife or a son yarshins his mother, and that leads to a havora from shevet to shevet. So therefore, we learned it from Unisat. Urab Zeya, who learned it from Vavora, my time of Umar Muyunasatim. Dr. Gemara, Urche de Crow, Unasatim is not an unusual type of word. So there is no hay to be gathered from that unusual lashon because it's not an unusual lashon at all. Rav Menashe bar Yirmiyah Amar Mahach. He also, we have a different makar, a makar for Novi. So I think that comes up pretty clear that we're just looking for a like an asmachta, we're not really looking for where the Torah says it, because now we're switching to Navi, we don't learn up halacha from Navi. It says, V'yamim in those days, Chala Chizkiyo Lamus, Chizkiyo was very ill. V'yavay love Yeshayo ben Amitz, a Navi. V'yamir love, and he told him, Kayamar Hashem, Tzav Leveischa, it's time to announce to your household what you want to do with your assets. Why is it time to do that? Kimeis Ata, because you're all going to die. It didn't say you should be mocked at anybody. It just said you should just let them know. So you see clearly that tzava alone could transfer the chosim by a shchivmara. I'm sorry, I went back a lot. Achitophel, unfortunately, when Avshalom decided to rebel against his father David, Achitophel picked the wrong side, and he decided to go with Avshalom. And Avshalom wasn't sure how to manifest, how to exert his power over Klal Yisrael. He was looking for an eitzah. So he asked, I forgot who the other person he asked was, and he also asked Achitophel, who was a very big yoyz. Achitophel gave him a good idea. Go and take. One of them said, but Achitophel said is go and be mizana with all of your father's pilakshim. Go live with all the pilakshim. There's no better way to show that you're the melech and your father's ois, because you're literally pushing him down and making a major show of power. That was the eitzah that Achitophel gave him. Another gave him a different eitzah to go attack David HaMelech, because David HaMelech was with his men. He was retreating, and he said, no, you should go and attack them wherever they are, and that's how you'll show that you're the new king. And what happened was Avshalom decided to listen to the eitzah of the other guy, not of Achitophel, which means that Achitophel knew at that point that he was going to die. How did he know that he was going to die? So the Meforshim Adanovi say over there that Achitophel was a conniving SOB, because he figured eventually David HaMelech or his followers would be very, very strong. So what would happen is maybe Avshalom would end up killing David, but eventually Avshalom would get killed for being mizana with the father's pilakshim, and now there's a power vacuum. So he had this fantasy that he would eventually able to be the king. Now that he saw that wasn't going to happen, he knew David HaMelech would triumph, because based on the age of the other guy, they're going to try fighting with David's army. It's not going to work. David's would have triumphed, and then he's going to get killed because he was married to Malchus because he hooked up with Absalom. So the moment he saw, he was so sure that he had the right Eitzah, and that Absalom was following the wrong path, and this rebellion was eventually going to be squashed, and he'll after they do all the Din Torah cleaning up, he's going to be killed. So he decided it's time to go home and settle his affairs. Vayachvosh es hachamor, vayelech al beisoy el iroi, vayitzav es beisoy. Again, a lashon tzivoy without any kinyanim. Vayichanek, and he hung himself. He killed himself because he knew anyway he was going to eventually be captured by David HaMelech's army and be killed for being murdered in Malchus. Once again, it's above I'm sorry.
We're going to learn out from this story that he knew the halacha, he could transfer the things without a written.
He knew about the Shchimara works,
and yet he violates an issue of Deraisa. So we don't learn out from here that suicide is.
So what you're telling me is some people are contradictory.
I mean, it's just we're going to learn something from him, but clearly not the other thing.
So that's right. So I tell people, if you want to learn from me a Blat Kamar, fine, but don't learn from me how to not talk during laning. Isn't that human nature?
Yeah, maybe
I guess that's what you're trying to point out.
About both of these things.
What?
I mean, it seems in the same story, we're going to say we're going to.
I hear what you're saying. Now you know how Seinfeld got a script. Tanu Rabban, people are very, very contradictory. Right? Tanu Rabban, Shloisha Dvarim Tziva Achitophel Esbanav. There were three things that Achitophel told his children. One is Al Tiyu b'machloikis. Don't be in a machloikis. And the Marsha talks a little bit about, maybe I'll pop into the Marsha for a minute. He talks about, he didn't say don't make machloikis. He says don't be even involved in a machloikis. Ve'al timrdu b'machus beis David. I don't think you should be married b'machus beis David. It didn't turn out too well for me. And you want to know when to plant and what to plant to have the most success with your crops. If Shavuos is a beautifully clear Yom Tov, no clouds in the sky, that's a sign zero chitim. That's a good sign that it's a good time to plant wheat that will be a good, successful crop. Masutra Omar Bolol Itmar. What he said was, if it's cloudy and overcast, that's when it's a good time to plant chitim. It doesn't really mean either perfectly clear or overcast. All he meant to say is, even if it's not perfectly clear, what?
Like today's weatherman.
even if it's a little bit cloudy, but there's a northern wind that's going to blow away the clouds and make it clear. Zehu bar, that would be considered bar, and therefore it would be a good time to plant wheat. I just want to take a quick peek into the Marsha, who talks about what Achitophel meant when he said, "Don't even be in a machlokes." It's almost like you shouldn't even be a bystander. I'm just going to peek into the Marsha for a minute.
Saying that they shouldn't fight with each other.
I'm not sure if that's what it means. Let's see what the Rishbam says. That's what the Art Scroll says.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what the Marsha says to maybe didn't what the Marsha means. Any quotes that from the Marsha? Okay. So Zogt the Heilige Marsha. V'loy Amru. Is it clear? It's not clear. I hear this. V'loy Amar, he didn't say Al Tachloiku, don't argue. Levi Shepa Amim, Loy Huzar Adam Milachlak Im Chaverav. Sometimes a person is not prohibited from fighting with his friend, Kisha Over Olav Haderach. I'm not sure exactly what that condition is. Kisha Over Olav Haderach, what it means? Aval, Amar Altiu Oisin Gourmet HaMachloikis. Don't even do anything that'll cause Machloikis. Because Achitophel wasn't in a Machloikis with David HaMelech. He was just an intitzender. He was giving the aitzes to the person who was making a machlokes. So he says, never mind, don't fight a machlokes yourself. Don't even be involved as an advisor. Don't even be an intitzender. Don't Don't be a what's it called when you're
Instigator.
an instigator. Don't even be an instigator to machlokes. Just stay far away. The Amar then he said al timru b'malchus beistavid. Okay, we won't get into the details of that. But al kolpanim, he also says a very nice thing. What happens if a terrace is clear? That's a good time for chitin. Kedamrinon boy shmaitz tzilusa. Learning needs clarity. Kiyoyim de istana. Lakach, and therefore kishat teres shehu yoyim kabbalos Torah borer beruach tefonis min hasheves boy. If the day of learning is a good clear day, who simin yafel lahalacha. That's a good sign that Torah and halacha will become clear. So what does that have to do with planting chitin? You know what causes someone to have wisdom? By eating chitin. In fact, Eitadas was wheat. Yosef das, Yosef machiv, meaning tinika oichel kezayis dogon marchikin. That's when you have to start staying away from its toy, I think, because it becomes a bardas. For minon Hashem she'ena tinik yodea likros abba v'ima ad sheyitom tam dogon. Mitkorla etadas. So chitim and das are connected. That's why the success of a crop of chitin will be somewhat related to the success in planting chitin. Okay, so
Chitin doesn't grow on trees.
Neither does money.
Huh?
Neither does money.
Yeah, okay.
It doesn't grow on a tree. No, it means it's not a tree, it's a crop.
Eitz hadas, isn't it?
Oh, so
Eitz.
how could chitin be, how could the eitz hadas be chitin? Eitz is not sure that it was a tree, you mean?
Right.
I don't know. Maybe you could refer to it as eitz. That's why the comics have it as an apple. Because it wouldn't look good if you chopped a chita. Yeah, but I think there's a lot of sheets of what it was. Isn't there a sheet that it was an esrig? No, I think one sheet was an esrig. There's a lot of different sheets about what it was. Okay.
Esrig, fig tree. That's where the fig leaf comes into.
And also, if it was chitin, it's also a little bit unusual because people don't eat chitin raw. I mean, the kloish you eat, but generally chitin is made into bread. And at that point, Hashem hadn't yet taught them how to make bread.
Right, and you have to process it. Okay, right. In Gan Eden, nothing had to be processed.
Right, that's right. But the thing is, a nice juicy apple looks good. A wheat kernel, when you look at the wheat kernel, you're not thinking about the cupcake. You're looking at a piece of wheat that's not so enticing. But the Gemara says that it could have been it was wheat. Okay, Zok the Gemara weiter. Talnu. Oh no, we did the instruction that Achitova left for his children. Okay. Amalei Rab Abba or Rab Ashi. Anan ad Rab Yitzchak bar Rab Dimai Masninala. We learned this on something that Rab Yitzchak bar Rab Dimai taught us when we're talking about what to plant and when to plant. The last day of Sukkot, or Matzah Yom Tov of Sukkot, and Chag is the time where we're in Nidoinin Alamoyim, right? That's when we daven Tfilas Geshem. So on the last day of Chag, Hakoil Tzoifin LaOshun Hamarach. Everybody looks to the Oshun Hamarach to see which way it's going to blow. And as a matter of fact, Tosha speaks out. There's many fires. So Tosha says that was always burning. So if you wanted to look to see which way the wind was blowing, a good place to look would be towards the Beis Hamikdash. I'm sorry? That was the Kedoshos. So not the Klapei Tzofin. If they saw the smoke blowing towards the north, meaning the wind must be blowing from the south, and Niyim Smechim, that would cause, when the wind blows from the south, it brings a lot of rains. A lot of rains means everything will be moist, which means Paris will not last long, they will rot. So therefore, Anim Smechim, because the Gevirim who are producing these crops are going to want to sell them right away because they know they won't last long, they can't warehouse them, so therefore prices will drop. but ubalabatam at saving because they're not going to get maximum dollar for their crops. And therefore uperish markibim. But not the klape dorim. If the smoke is moving towards the south, meaning the wind must be blowing from the north, then anima tzavim, they're going to be sad because there's not going to be a whole bunch of pears available because the gevirim could warehouse them and sell them later when they're going to get maximum profit. Therefore, they should give that's a sign that there won't be so much rain. Uperis mishtamrit, not the klape mizrach. What if it's the smoke's moving towards the east, meaning the wind must be blowing from the west? Then akoil smechin, because that gives you just enough rain that there'll be good fruit. It'll also be plentiful, so it won't be too expensive. So the balabata make their money. The aniyim can find reasonable prices for pears. Klape ma'ariv, but if the smoke is blowing towards the west, meaning the wind is blowing from the east, hakolat seven, that's bad for everybody. And the Rashbam says, "Shemizrachis moinos moter." If there's a wind blowing from the east, that causes drought, and that's bad for everybody because prices go way up, and there's not so much to sell, so people aren't making the money that they would want to. Okay, Romanian fact Gemara. Mizrachis loylam yafa. A eastern wind is always good. We just said a moment ago that an eastern wind which blows towards the west creates drought, while we have another brayso that says that the eastern wind is good. Mizrachis loylam yafa. It's always good. We just said it's bad, and Maravas loylam kasher, which we said a minute ago is good. Zok the brayso weiter. Ruach tzafonis. If it's coming from the north, yafa lechitin, it'll be good for chitin. B'shah shaviu shlish, and that's because they don't need too much water. So that's why ruach tzafonis means there won't be too much water. Because that's not good for zeisim. B'shah sheyanitzu, when they're blossoming, because they do need a lot of water. Ruach deraimus, which indicates there will be a lot of rain. Kasher lechitin, it's bad for chitin b'shah shaviu shlish because there'll be too much water. Because they do need water. How do you know what's good and what's bad for the oil, which is the olives, and what's good and bad for the wheat? When you walk into the Beis Hamikdash, the shulchan would be on the right, which is the north, and the menorah would be on the south, which is the left. The right is where chitin got placed, because the lechem aponim is made out of chitin. It's placed on the right, which is the north. So the north wind is good for chitin, and the south wind is good for the menorah, which represents olives, which is oil, which is olives. So that's a good way to remember which wind is good for what. But I'll call upon them, you have a steer in whether or not this ruach ma'aravis is good or not. So loy kasha halon v'halahu. It depends on where you are. In Yerushalayim, they needed a lot of rain, because it was relatively dry, it was at a higher altitude. But in Bavel, they didn't want rain. So therefore, in Bavel, when there's too much rain, it's going to be bad. But in Yerushalayim, rain is a really good thing. Let's look at the Rashbam. Halon, Livnei Bavel, Hashoichlim b'Metzula, they live in the lower lands. Ve'artzenu miluch lachas, we have moist soil. Ve'einitzricha l'mota kol kach, we don't need much rain. The dun misna b'raisa, b'sraisa. It's this, the second brayso is referring to Bavel, Shemai Rabbis Kasha, that the wind that comes from the west is bad because it creates too much water. Because for the soil conditions in Bavel, it's not so good. But on the eastern wind is good because it'll dry things out and avoid rot. The first brayso that says that the wind that brings rain is a good thing, that's for Eretz Yisrael, which is a much more arid climate. And they benefit from it. Okay, Zok to Gemara weiter. Tanya Abashol Omer Yom Tov Shel Atzeres Bar Simin Yafa L'Chol Hashana Kul. If it's a nice clear day, if you have good weather on Shavuos, it's a good sign that the rest of the year or a big portion of the year will be good weather. This past Shavuos, was it good weather? We must have had good weather because we're having very good weather this season. Okay. I'm sorry? I don't know. Why not? They were in Chutz when they were speaking. The first day of Rosh Hashanah, If it's warm, it's a nice day, then kula shata chamima the whole year. The Rashbam says it doesn't mean there'll never be rain. It means most of the year will be very good weather. I think we had a nice Rosh Hashanah too. Ikar, if it's very cold, kula shaita karira. Why do I need to know that? Since when is the Gemara a weatherman? The Gemara is not Harold Hussein. Remember Harold Hussein? So when is the Gemara weather? You remember him? Since when is the Gemara a weatherman? The Gemara, it's very negel. It's Filosh Kohen Gadol. Remember that the Kohen Gadol, when he goes into the Kodesh HaKodeshim, he davens. It's Shumo, Shechuna. So it depends, depending on what type of year they're going to have. If it's going to be a very dry year, a very good weather year, he has to daven for more rain. If it's going to be a rainy year, he has to daven should dry out a little bit. So he actually adjusted. He just didn't read it out of the master. He adjusted his tefillah to service those needs. Rabbi Weinberg once asked a very, very good question. The Kohen Gadol once a year has an opportunity to go into the Kodesh HaKodeshim. He couldn't think of anything better to ask than that it should be rain, too much rain, not rain. Isn't that a Mod Zachim? There's so many important things going on. That's what's on the set. What? I understand, but there's other things too. He should be done for health. He should be done for shalom. There's so many things to done for.
500.
What?
The S&P 500.
S&P 500. That's right. So Bitcoin should be matzliach.
That was the S&P
So Weinberg said a gewaltige Zach, and one of the things he said is Val Yekanois Tfilas Oved Rachim B'Tfilas. We need rain. Don't let the Tfilas Oved Rachim who don't want it to rain. Don't let that overpower the tefillas of the people who are davening for rain because Klal Yisrael needs panos. So Zok Rabbi Weinberg, imagine somebody is traveling. He went on a trip and he's coming back after months away from home. He's exhausted. He misses his family. He's mitching and he's coming back with his wagon and it starts to pour and the roads are full of mud and the horses can barely schlep the wagon. It's getting stuck in the mud and he's wet and he's cold and he's miserable. And in that matzav, he cries out to Hashem with his whole heart, Hashem, please stop the rain. The koyach of that tefillah is so powerful, it will overwhelm any tefillahs that anybody is making and HaKadosh Baruch Hu will stop the rain for him. That's very dangerous. So that's why the most powerful tefillah of the year, when the Kohen Gadol is in the Kodesh HaKodeshim, he has to ask B'dafka for that, because that's the only way he'd be able to neutralize a heartfelt tefillah. So Rabbi Weinberg wanted to bring out, you see the power of a heartfelt tefillah, that only the Kohen Gadol's tefillah in the base Kodesh HaKodeshim could possibly, it wasn't in the Kodesh HaKodeshim, it was actually in the Kodesh. Only such a tefillah will all be able to neutralize his tefillah, because otherwise, no matter who needs rain, such a heartfelt tefillah would triumph. For Rav Amar Rav Nachman, Rav said in the name of Rav Nachman, Matna Shchiv Mera, Midrabanan Balmahi. Really, it's only Midrabanan, Shema, Titraf, Daitelov. Now, Rav Nachman, the Rashbam speaks out, and Tosfos was on Amar Aleph too, giving us one of the Makaris. So you see, even though Rav Nachman was saying you learn from Bavartim or Nesatim, he holds it's really Midrabanan, but we were just talking about it. The Smachta, Shema, Titraf, Daitelov. And the Rashbam says as follows. In the second nusach, he says, I like the second shot. Zot Rashbam, the lahachi tikun rabbanon sheyiknu dvarav b'amira. Why did the rabbanon make a takana that the mirror tzivui of a shivmara should be a valid kinyan? Shemain dvarav niknin chayshinan shema titrav daito bechelyoy mitoich tzar shu yodeh shelo yikaimu banav tzavaos. If he knows he's not in the position to be able to make a proper kinyan, but he wants this to occur, and he's powerless to make it occur, that's such a painful situation for him, that could itself cause damage, and that's why they would have made such a takana.
What's this going to do with Achitophel?
It is, Ibn Achitophel was not a shchivmer at the time.
If this is the case, that we allow this to happen because the Shivmira is going to be concerned that his tzavah is not going to be listened to, he was going to kill himself. Better not to listen to him.
Right. I think that's a Gavalda Kasha. He clearly was not a Shchivmira at the time. Achitophel was not a Shchivmira at the time. And even B'melech Hiskiyo, you could say he was very sick at the time when Yeshayahu came. But Achitophel was not a Shchivmira, he was a healthy man. I was thinking about that Kasha. I don't know. Gavalda Kasha. The whole proof is that Shchivmira who's almost Titrav Daitoi, he's not a Shchivmira. So I'm happy you asked that kasha, because I just started in the middle of the Rashbam, who didn't like the first shot in why Shchivim Ras Koina, and he says the second shot. But maybe because of your kasha, let's have a look at the first shot. Matna Shchivim Ras. Let's look at the third line of the Rashbam. Shakoina Bamir Ba'alma Einim in Atayra Ukrad Il Eitz Toiva Kamash B'lam. The psukim were Mila and Eitz Toiva, which will explain what happened by Chitayvel. Sheyitzava Levezoi B'Shash Misasoi Mashesh L'Tavot. Now's a good time to settle your affairs. Let everybody know. Not even necessarily referring to Kinyan. Hein al yidei Kinyan. You should do it through a Kinyan. Hein al yidei dibur k'loin dvarim she'eshrim Kinyan. So Adam modil of Nevesei. There's certain things that have nothing to do with Kinyan. You have to let your family know. Where's your life insurance policy? What is the password to your bank account? Michayev lo klum. L'moyne v'chafetz if you had me, who we might have. Kalim sitting by, there's a lot of important information that need to be that you need to instruct your children with. It's calling Gzeira Shema Achi Yavo Edim Liknois. By the time Edim come to make the kinyan, Titrev Daita Shal Choila Kodim Shiavai. Maybe he'll get sick and he won't have a time to make the kinyan properly with Edim. So all we're learning from Achitophel is that a person is supposed to settle his affairs. That's the limit from there. So we're taking that a step further, and we're saying, therefore, they let the kinyan work, even though technically he could have made the kinyan. We're just afraid he won't be able to assemble people close enough. Rishbam asks, I don't like why does not Rishbam like that shot? Because okay, so let it be bottled. So if he's too late, he's too late. What's wrong with that? There has to be a pressing reason why we want to salvage this kinyan, even though it's too late. That's why he says the svar, if a person knows he can't accomplish what he wants to, he will be teacher of daitoi. But according to the first shot, Achitophel's raya makes perfect sense. It's just telling you to settle your affairs. So I'm so happy you asked the kasha, because now I understand why the Rashbam had the first shot. The first shot is just a matter of helping people settle their affairs. Okay, Zok to Gemara weiter.
As far as Shchimra is concerned, maybe the Gemara is telling you what the definition of a Shchimra is. Somebody who's going to die. It doesn't matter what he's going to die from. He could be taken to execution as well. But either way, if he's about to die, whether he's sick or not, this could be the definition.
Well, I think it's asking if the whole reason why a Shchivim Ras Tzava is valid is because if it's not valid, it will hasten his death.
If it's total the opposite, let it not be valid.
He's the one who's committing suicide, right?
Right, but he's about to die. That's the point.
He's about to kill himself.
Yeah, but he's about to die.
Death by not accepting his tzava. Don't accept his tzava. He won't kill himself. Well, avoidance of derisa.
I don't know if that's the criteria when he's going to kill himself.
This way, he won't kill himself because he wants to settle his affairs first. Moshe Zippin once told me that he had a neighbor once who was a terrible apikurs. He said, "I want you to know, Mr. Zippin, I did every sin in the Torah, every sin, and I'm proud of it." So Moshe Zippin says, "There's one sin you didn't do yet: suicide." Try it, you'll like it.
That's pretty far.
Okay. Zog Gemara weiter. So Zog Gemara weiter. Umi Amar Rab Nachman Haki. Did Rab Nachman say that? The Amar Rab Nachman Apagav Rab Shmuel. Even though Shmuel said, "Hamoicher star chav v'chaverei v'chazru machul." If you sell a star to your friend, so Reuben is owed $100,000 by Shimon, and Reuben sells the star chav to Levi, Reuben can be moichel and mess up Shimon who bought it. Even if Reuben dies, Reuben's children can be moichel that chav and mess up Levi. Shmuel does agree. Shchivim Mamish transfers the loan exactly, and there is no more liability to the original Malva. It's completely cut from him. If you would say that Matna Shchivim works Midaraisa, so then you could see how it has a financial ability. It has the ability to transfer over the Shivut from Reuben to the Lekeach, to Levi. If you're going to say it's only a midrabanan to gazach, amai eino yochalimcha. How could it's only a kinyan, even if a kinyan deraisa doesn't transfer over the shibud, how could a kinyan derabanan transfer the shibud? Zaktamar eino shel Torah. The matna shchivra is not midaraisa, but vasuk shel Torah. They gave it an extra strength that normally even if you made a kinyan, you wouldn't be able to transfer the Shibud and Gansen, but through a matna shchivra, you could transfer it in Gansen. Amar Rava, Amar Nachman, that's not a concern because I'm sorry, I'll pause for a second. Now, what happens if Reuben sold $100,000 liability that Shimon owed him to Levi? So he would sell it for 60 cents on the dollar. So he would take $60,000 for it, right? That's the norm, right? If you're selling a choiv, right? If you're selling debt, you don't get a 100 cents to the dollar. You get 60 cents to the dollar. Now he's moichel. So Dr. Shpam and Tosfos, if you hold off Didi de Garmi, I'm liable to pay Levi because I've damaged him. The question is, how much do you have to pay Levi? Do you have to pay Levi the full liability of the $100,000 that you damaged him? Or maybe you only have to pay him the $60,000 that he paid you for. So Tosfos brings multiple rayas that you only have to pay the $60,000 that you damaged him. So when we look at the damage, we don't look at the validity of the loan, the amount of the loan, we look at how much you paid. Amar Rava, Amar Abnach, Shchiv Mera, Sha'amar Yidar Ploini Bebayisa. What if a Shchiv Mera did not use a proper syntax? He just said, I want Ploini to live there, but he didn't give it to him, right? Or Yoichel Ploini Pairs Dekelza, I want Ploini to get the pairs of this dekel, Loy Amar Klum. That wouldn't work, because even the Shchiv Mera has to adhere to certain guidelines. Achi Yoimru Tenu Bayizel Ploini. Give him the house, and boy. So you're giving him the house. Or Tnudekos Elaploni, the Yoichel Perais. Zok tomorrow, remember the Savar of Nachman, Milsa the Isi Babari, Isi Beshchivmara, the Lessa Babari, Lessa Beshchivmara. The about, even Rab Nachman is giving the Shchivmara a certain structure that he has to adhere to. It means it has to bear a certain similarity to a Matnas Bari. The only difference is that the Matnas Shchivmara works without a proper kinyan. But whatever you are doing would have had to have worked had you made a kinyan if you would have been a bari. And that's why if you just give payers deco, or if you just say someone should live there, which is like payers deco, but you're not giving him ownership at home, it wouldn't work. Because a bari with a kinyan couldn't do that. Rava said in the name of Rab Nachman, Shchiv Merash Amar Tenu Halva Osi Laploini. If a Shchiv Merash said, just give my halva to another party, because you can't sell pairs decal. You can sell decal the peroisa. So if I'm saying I'm only giving you, I'm sorry, correct. No, it's not, because I'm just saying you can live here. I'm not saying I'm being making you my house. Lagabi it's dira. I'm not saying I'm giving you a lease on the house. You could live there. So it's only pairs decal. He's not saying I'm giving you my house for this period of time to live there. No, you can't. You could only give him a kinyan in the house, Lagabe living there for that period of time. So Zok to Gemara, I by Halvo works the less of a bari, even though we just learned that if you try selling a loan, you could still be Michael. Zok to Gemara, Papa Amar, Hoyel v'Yirish Yersha. Shchiv Mera is not limited to what could be done through a kinyan, because Shchiv Mera is working like a Yerusha. By a Yerusha, when Reuven dies, any money that Shimon owes him does transfer over to Reuven's children. So since through a Shchiv Mera, you're transferring it like Yerusha, it'll actually work even in a case where Matana wouldn't work. And therefore, if a Shchiv Mera says, transfer my halva to Pliny, he will actually get that halva like a Yerush, which is a big chiddush, because Matna Shchiv Mera now is a lot more powerful even than a Matana. And it's not even limited by the rules of Matana. But Rav Acha bar Ravika Amar, what are you talking about? Don't tell me that a halva you can't transfer. Avad you can transfer halva. Halva isa b'bari. How do you have that? Uchud Rafuna Marav, Damar Rafuna Marav, Mana Libi Yatcha, and I go to Shimon and I say, you owe me $100,000. Tineu Ploini, give it to Levi. The Mamad Shloshton, Sharuv and Shimon and Levi are all standing there. And I tell Shimon, the $100,000 that you owe me, give it to Levi. Kana. There you are, Kana. And remember, we learned that's Hilchso B'loi Taima. It's different in Vias. But the fact is, in that case, we just learned that the Halva, the Shiba does transfer to Levi, and Reuven can no longer even be Michaelit. So you see, even through regular Kinyonim, it would work for a Bari. Therefore, we can also say that it would work by Matashchim.